So we got a lot of knowledge floating around here at Sheepdog Response that we're going to be talking about here today.
My Pat looks so lost. It's like looking around like, what did I
It's Pat's not.
I am normally.
Pat's not good on camera.
So I'm sitting down and talking.
All right, what's the most important thing I need to know in a self-defense situation? Well, we're going to answer that right now. As far as me and my background, I'm a retired Army veteran. I did 22 years in the U.S. Army. 17 years of that was spent specifically teaching Army combatives. People call me the Godfather Army combatives. I helped write the manual that they still use to this day. So I'm here to impart some of the knowledge that I've gained while I was in the military, pass it on to you guys so that you can be better prepared to defend yourselves. To me, the first thing is about managing distance or controlling the range between one person and the other. Depending on what Pat's capabilities are or what his intent is, if he's trying to get close to me and rob me or get a hold of me, I have to be able to control the distance. If Pat approaches me and his hands are up and he wants to bang it out, if I can stay outside of striking range or all the way inside of striking range, I can nullify his strikes. His posture, his intent, his eyes, his hands are going to tell me exactly what his intentions are, and that's what's going to allow me to understand what range I need to operate at. Also, whatever range I operate at is all dependent on what my skill set is as a person as well, right? If I'm not confident in striking, then I'm not going to play a walk around and striking game with Pat, okay? Especially if he's kind of shown me with his body that he knows what he's doing. If I'm not a trained striker, being outside of striking range or just like inside of striking range is going to be a very bad situation for me, because this is where his punches are going to be most effective. Most people, even guys that are untrained, understand that if they swing their hands enough times and they hit me in the face enough times, that they're going to win the fight. And me as a trained professional or as a trained fighter, I understand that that's what his plan is. Most people are going to utilize what we call the universal fight plan. And that is, I swing and I punch, and if I make enough connections, then the fight is over. That's why I, as somebody who's a regular citizen who doesn't want to get involved into fighting or doesn't want to get hurt, or I'm not the person that's pursuing a fight, I have to understand that that's what the basic plan is going to be for most untrained fighters. Is they're going to try to swing and punch. If you go on YouTube and you watch any of the videos of these street fights, you'll see that that's what these people are doing. They got no skill. They're just swinging their hands back and forth, and hopefully they make a connection. And most of the time they do. I would say it's a lucky punch, but obviously they've planned to throw that strike. And that's going to be successful for them if I hang out inside of striking range. So I'm either going to be all the way out to where any of his strikes, even if he has a stick, a bat, his kicks, his knee strikes, I'm too far away for them to make contact in order for them to be effective. Or I'm going to be all the way into some type of dominant body position, which we'll talk about second. But the way I control the range is I have to move my feet. If I'm standing inside of striking range and Pat throws a strike at my head, but I move my head and not my feet, I still haven't created any distance. And even worse so is I've kind of messed up my center of gravity. So if Pat was to take a step forward and punch with his right hand, I can no longer move my feet anymore, and that's when that punch makes a connection. You can kind of see that Pat went to feint a takedown. Again, somebody who's trained is going to know that if I get the person's hands up, the bottom half of their body is going to be available for takedowns. That's something that Pat has utilized at every single level of fighting, become the Texas State MMA champion with that type of game plan. But most of the time, whenever I fight somebody that's out in the streets, they're not going to be as trained or as smart as Pat is, right? But if Pat was to throw a strike and I move my feet instead of just my head, you can see that not only have I made his strike null and void, but any follow-on strikes, any takedown attempt, I'm going to have a better opportunity I'm going to have time and space in order to react appropriately. The less time that I'm in a reactive state, the better, the more relaxed that I'll be able to be, right? Controlling the distance is one of those things. Now, let's say Pat's loading up with a big overhand right, which you'll see a lot of these in fights, or they'll do like a swooping, swinging hooks of that sort. It's going to give me an opportunity to close the distance and put my head in a position where those strikes aren't going to be effective. If I was to put my head in Pat's chest and my hands were behind my back, he would still be able to make contact with my head, but those strikes won't be as effective as if we were at distance and he was to throw a straight punch or even like a looping left hand, because he'll have not only the ground behind his punches, but he'll have leverage and he'll be able to involve the explosiveness of his muscles into making contact with my head. So again, I either want to be all the way out or all the way in. Controlling the distance is the most important thing when it comes to self-defense. Now, if I run away from Pat, did I control the distance? 100%, okay? And I've probably successfully avoided that interaction altogether. Pat shows me aggression, I leave, I go home, everybody gets to live, Pat gets to live, I get to live, and we get to celebrate our birthdays and stuff like that. But if that's not an option, and I'm not good at fighting in a striking distance, then I have to close. And again, the way that I'm gonna close my distance is, for one, I'm always gonna make sure that my hands are up. This is gonna make sure that no lucky punches or anything is gonna get snuck in between. Now, when it comes to blocking punches, there's different discussions on how we do that. You'll see pro boxers, they'll carry their hands high on their temples. Some people are using their shoulder to block. Some people will just guard their chin. That's all shooter preference, right? It just depends on what your preference is, what your assets and liabilities are when it comes to training, okay? For me, I like to keep my hands close to my chin. That I just feel more comfortable that way, and I find that works for me, for my body type. But as I close the distance, I'm gonna try to, again, place my head into Pat's chest, and both of my hands are gonna go to his biceps, and this is gonna kind of slow down his punches, right? All of his punches are gonna originate from his shoulder. So if I put my hands on his shoulder, it's gonna give me a chance to kind of slow those down. And I'm gonna use a tactile feel to kind of feel where his arms are at. That way, if he goes to pull his hand back to punch, I can put my hand on it. So now when he tries to make contact, I can slow that punch down, or I could even nullify it by putting my arm on his arm. Something as simple as that. If I'm looking for Pat's hands though, if he's punching me in the face and I'm looking for his hands, it makes my hands move away from my face and may give him opportunity to punch. Let's say he does something like fake a jab and I go to whack his hand away. Now he has full range to my head, right? So that's why whenever I do block a punch, I want to make sure that it's either at my head, right, where he's trying to hit me, or it's originating at his shoulder to kind of slow his punches down, okay? So again, I'm closing the distance, right? I'm controlling the distance by either running away or getting my head all the way to the inside. Now, after that, what's the most important thing, right? So first thing is to control the distance or control the range. The second is I want to gain a dominant body position. Now, when we talk about dominant body position in fighting, most people are talking about mount, rear mount, side control, knee on belly, grappling. Before that happens though, there is also dominant body positions while standing. It could be something as simple as if Pat was to throw a jab and I was able to get behind his elbow. All right, I haven't touched him yet, or we're not touching each other, but because I'm behind him, I'm in the dominant body position. I have access to his whole body. He's not facing me, I'm facing him. I have an opportunity to take his back, take him down, kick his legs, counter over the top. It just depends on what your assets and liabilities are, right? But also while standing, it is about dominating the position with an underhook, having good head position, and then controlling at least one or both of his arms. Okay, being in a position, what we call like modified seatbelt, where I have an underhook and I have bicep control, it lets me know where both of Pat's arms are. I know where his hands are. So if he tries to reach for his pants to pull something out of his pocket, I can see that, I can feel it, and I can control it. It puts me in a position to where I can at least be safe for a second. I haven't done anything with the fight, but I know that Pat doesn't have access to his tools or his weapons or anything like that, and I want to put myself in that position. The great thing about having dominant head position and an underhook is it also keeps him away from my tools. So let's say I do have a pistol, I'm carrying one that's appendix, or I have a knife in my pocket. If my head's in head control position and I have wrist control and an underhook, then he has no access to those things as well. Now, when is a gunfight, right? A gunfight is always a gunfight if I have one on me. I've brought it to the fight, or I'm walking around and a bad actor decides that they want to come up to me and be like, hey, let's do whatever. It could turn into a grappling gunfight immediately, right? Controlling the distance is obviously going to play a key in that, but sometimes I don't have a say when the fight starts. Unfortunately, you never want to be the guy who's second to start in the fight. Okay, so make sure that if this happens, that you have speed, surprise, and violence action on your side. But sometimes I can't guess what's going to happen, and Pat is able to get close enough to put his hands on me. We are now in a fight over my gun. If for one, I know I've brought it there, or two, he knows that I have it somehow. Okay, it turns into a gunfight. But I have to also assume it's a gunfight or a knife fight whenever somebody approaches me anyway, because I don't know if he has one or not. okay? So control the distance, whether it's all the way in or all the way out. Have dominant body position. Dominant body position is gonna save me from a lot of things, right? If I have good head position and I know where Pat's hands are, then I don't have to take his gun, I don't have to take his knife, I don't have to employ either one of my weapons as well. We can talk it out, I can de-escalate the situation, or depending on my assets and liabilities, maybe I do take the fight to the ground, take his back, maybe I then draw my weapon. These are all things that takes time and training. This is stuff that we talk about in Protector 1 here, Protector 1 and Protector 2 here at Sheepdog Response. Also in our unarmed and armed combatives courses, we talk about all of these things. But it's not something that you're gonna do on the fly. This is not something that, oh, holy crap, this person's attacked me. Let me go ahead and employ all these techniques I haven't trained before. Just like anything else that you wanna be good at, you have to get in the gym, not just here at Gracie Humida Cedar Park or at Sheepdog Response, but any gym, apply these techniques, train them live with a person who's actively trying to fight you. That way, if the situation does arise that you have to either control a distance, gain dominant body position, finish the fight, employ or retain a weapon, all of these things will come. We'll have the muscle memory or the neural pathways to operate, as opposed to it being a surprise, putting yourself into the black and then just freaking out, right? You have to pressure test all of the things that you train. Pressure test the stuff that we teach you guys. You know what I mean? If you come to one of our classes, you see it on one of our videos, go ahead, take it back to your gym, ask somebody about it, try it out, see what you can do. But the principles of controlling the distance and having dominant body position, you can't really say too much about that. Regardless of who you're asking, they're gonna tell you that those two things are very important when it comes to stuff.